What is the secret to unlocking your full potential? What makes your idols any different than you? How do you become the person you've always wanted to be in life? This is where you get all of your questions answered. My name is Justin Shank, and I sit down with some of the most epic individuals who are changing the world with their actions in business and in life. We discuss how they did it, why they pushed themselves, and more importantly, how they were able to focus on continuous growth to achieve their dreams. Welcome to the Growth Now movement. This week, I sit down with Velky. Aaron is an entrepreneur, writer, coach, speaker, and author from Baltimore, Maryland. He's the CEO of Ortus Academy, a financial intelligence company that's focused on changing the narrative of money, success, and business for the future generations. In the last few years, he's worked with over 2,000 young adults and helped them shift from their mindset in the way they see money, careers, and happiness. He's helped over 700 people master their credit and travel around the world for free. He's coached over 360 athletes and released his first book called Let Her Play in March 2020. So make sure you guys go out there and get it. The reason I had Aaron on the show is because I actually met him at my event last year as he attended. And after that, you connect on social media, and I really try and pay attention to what people are doing in the world to make an impact. And as I was watching, I noticed the impact Aaron was making, and I was like, this is a conversation that needs to be had on my podcast. And so after he bought a ticket to this year's event, I reached out to him and was like, dude, we need to have a conversation. And got to know him, and he's just a really, really good guy. So you guys are going to see here why Aaron is so focused on making an impact in this world. I really think you guys are going to love this conversation. Now, before we get there, I want to remind you guys that Growth Now Movement Live is happening in September. Look, we're going to come out of this pandemic. We're really going to want human interaction. We want to make sure that interaction is purposeful and is going to help us level up. And that is why Growth Now Movement Live is a must attend this year. Obviously, the incredible speaker lineup, but I know that community is going to change your life. So head over to gnmlive.com, get your tickets now because it is going to be epic. Now, without further ado, let's get to the episode with Velky. Aaron, welcome to the show, man.
Dude, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, it's going to be a great conversation. You know, we I think you came to my event last year. That was like the first introduction of each other. I met you maybe briefly at, obviously a lot was going on, but it was Rhonda Smith, who is a 3-time guest on this show, who said, hey, you should come up to this event. And, obviously, first of all, honored that you would even come, man. You know, it was a labor of love, and now here we are. We're going to do it again. But we connected on social media, and I'm one of those people that I pay attention even if people don't realize I'm paying attention. And I watch what people are posting, and I watch what they're up to. And there's certain people that I'll reach out to and be like, all right, I want to know more. And you're one of those people because some of the things you post is super intriguing to me. You post from the heart versus posting from trying to sell something or whatever, man. And so I was like, let's have a conversation. We spoke a couple weeks ago, and I was like, now you got to come on the show. And so it was that natural evolution of like, okay, here we are now. But why don't we take a second and have you introduce who is Aaron today, and then we'll break down how you got there.
Man, tough question. Who is Aaron today? I've spent a lot of time trying to think of ways to introduce myself that are not ego-driven, but I'd say clearly all of my initiatives align in a very purpose-driven way. I'm essentially a social entrepreneur. And that word entrepreneur is one of my least favorite words nowadays because people just throw it around.
Yeah.
But I would say that I have a very deep sense of urgency in solving social issues and problems. And I'm not entirely sure where all of that comes from, but it is certainly a consuming and obsession of mine presently.
Yeah, man, let's talk about that for a second. Let's talk about social issues and what are some of the hot buttons for you right now that you're really trying to tackle?
Well, they all stem from real scenarios with people in my lives. My parents have really struggled for the last little more than 10 years. 2008 was crippling for them. So that certainly skewed what I was around and the conversations that I had to have at a very young age. Mm-hmm. I'm around friends that are absolutely miserable at their jobs. I'm around individuals that, maybe have a passion and clearly want that to be their world and have zero clue how to get there or even belief that they could. I'm around a lot of redlining. I'm around credit issues. I'm around all of these things. And money ended up being the undercurrent of all this. But I think the thing that floats on top most is happiness. Like I really want to help people become happy. And sometimes that means we got to talk about money. And even if it's taboo, we got to really dive into the weeds.
Yeah. Why do you think that connection happens? Why do you think money and happiness are aligned in some way, shape, or form?
Powerful question, man. One, our vices for unhappiness keep us there.
Yeah.
So the more unhappy we get, and I've been here, I did this, the more unhappy we get, the more we spend to get that quick endorphin rush. Then, come the end of the month, we recycle in, and emotions drive all of this behavior. Our behaviors shackle us. Then our shackling begets more shackling. And before you know it, we're 40 and we're like, well, I think I'm going to buy a motorcycle because I forgot to live, man. I forgot to be alive in a time where like I can literally do anything almost from my phone.
Yeah. And you're 100% right. It becomes this rat race of what are we truly chasing and what are the things? And like, I actually just got off another interview. She talks about being blissful, and she's a multimillionaire. And so people look at her and say, look, it's easy for you to be blissful because you're a millionaire. And she goes, okay, then why isn't money important? Right? Like if you think that's what makes it easy, then it is an important conversation. And, when you get that financial stability, yes, money does not buy the happiness, but it allows you to create whatever it is in your life, whatever that may be for happiness, right? Because it reduces stress. You don't have to worry about how's that rent check coming from. Like I grew up in a place where I watched my mom's car get repossessed growing up, man. Like, and then I lived as 19 years old. I was trying to help her out with bills. And I was eating freaking mac and cheese every single meal because that's all I could afford. Right. And so I've been there, which sucked. Saying how, when I went and bought something, I'd be like, hopefully that doesn't get rejected, to now there's a freedom of like, I know I can go do this. And it really kind of creates that. So how are you supporting people, with all of these issues, and how are you really helping them along the way?
A big piece of it's self-awareness. The mindset that we get comes from those experiences with your parents, the way teachers talk about it, the way family members approach it, the way your peers, have or have nots talk about it. And it's really hard to go anywhere with a GPS unless you know your current location. Mm-hmm. So self-awareness is a big, big piece of it. But I think we also try to reframe the conversation away from retirement. I'm not a believer in retirement. And when I say that, you can certainly slow life down, you can change. I'm all for that. But I am not interested in awarding people value from the world. It is no interest to me to not try to uplift other people. That's just my purpose. Like, as soon as I stop that, I'm going to die. Like I'm just going to wither away. So reframing the end goal is really important. We're big believers in process over product. We're big believers in, take your time. There's no there to get to. And if you're whole, which I imagine has been talked about a lot on a show like this, being whole alleviates the pressure to get there now, to spend for image and spend for identity. And when you take away those pressures, I think we all deep down want something more meaningful anyway. We want relationships, mm-hmm. We want love, we want fulfillment. But those are too big of ideas to get to first. And it takes a lot of work, and it's a slow process, but it's a meaningful one to us.
Yeah, and I love that too, because you think fulfillment and those things should be the easy things, but it's some of the hardest things to ever attain in your life, man. So what did that journey look like for you? Because obviously it wasn't always like that for you, right? You had mentioned you had the rat race. So how did you even begin this journey of discovery to then becoming the master and the teacher of this?
I'm not sure I'm any master, but this all started. So I studied financial economics in college, graduated when the recession bottomed out, and found myself like dodging financial jobs because they were really bad offers. And that led me to being an apartment maintenance manager in 2009 and 10. So like here I am, I just finished college. I was a Division I athlete, had a great college like career, if you want to call it that, academically. And now I'm literally cleaning the shit up in a different college, right? It was just like, I struggled with that identity a lot. And most importantly, I struggled to realize that as these paychecks were coming in, I was blowing all of it. Like within the time frame of getting my first paycheck, I had spent that check and the next one, like super fast.
Wow.
And here I studied money. Now I basically studied how to manage other people's money. Thank you, college.
Yeah.
But from there, I got to management. Management led me to a new place where I was building a business for somebody else. I got involved with another entrepreneur and kind of helped him get rolling as a partner. And all the way through that process, at every single step, I would look at it as if it was going to save me from my unhappiness. And I would step in hard and be like, this is it. And like 6 months would go by and I'd be like, this ain't it. There's something more. And maybe I'm crazy here, but I'm going to go after it. And I learned how to get paid to do something I loved. And it was just, at that time, it was just freelance graphic design. I was just, doing art and getting paid. But that was like a click to be like, whoa, wait a minute. What if my whole life was like this? This would be awesome.
Yeah.
And, you follow the breadcrumbs backwards. In hindsight, it's easier, but it was just, I was willing to work my tail off. And once I figured out that I could do something I love and get paid, my mindset shifted to like, I got to figure out, even if I only make $2,000 a month, I'm doing this.
Yeah. And that's the big thing. Like I look at what I'm doing now. And if I was just skating by, like taking back to the paychecks of old, but what I'm doing now, I'd be insanely happy because it's not the financial reward. But I do feel like when you align into your purpose, the things you're supposed to be doing, the things you really love, I think the money kind of chases you. Like we live in a world when we chase money, it eludes us. Like I'm the ultimate example of that, man. I've had 3 failed businesses because they never aligned with my purpose. They just were money opportunities. I chased the money and the money eluded me. And it was really the idea that I started to surround myself with individuals who thought differently. Yes, they were successful financially, but it had nothing to do with that. It had everything to do with finding that happiness, finding that purpose, really kind of diving into who am I as a person. I mean, is that kind of your experience too? And that's where you're leading individuals now?
Big time. Unless we've done the inner work, I think it's very hard to lead. And to your point, I think money doesn't lead. Money shouldn't lead. Money follows. And if you align differently through this process and really get to a point where you know self and know what true north is, it's amazing what kind of walls will get out of the way. Doesn't mean it comes easy. It's the hardest thing I've ever done, but still, for anybody listening that wants to make some of those changes and feels that they're aware that they want that's usually the epiphany that it takes. The commitment to it comes first. No matter where it takes you, where the journey goes, how hard it is, you just commit to it. And then things start to unfold in a beautiful way.
Yeah, dude, I love all of that, man. So what are some of the things that you're working on now in order to not only continue your own journey, because I think we're all on this forever journey of discovery and growth and all these things, but how are you helping others unlock this? Because I look at that and I go, at the end of the day, everybody's thing is different. Everybody's goal, everybody's passion, everybody's whatever is different. But I think there is a blueprint. There is something that we can formulate. So what are you putting together? What have you put together for these individuals and how are you leading now?
Great question again, man. I really have one singular purpose, and I took a long time. It took me really 3 years and a lot of near-death experiences to like awaken to it. And it's to uplift others through freedom, awe, and artistry. And those 3 words have a lot of significance to me. Awe being this like amazement of what the world is. Freedom can mean a lot of things individualistically. And then art is just a very powerful thing for me as well. That's where I started a lot of my careers. And I've got 3 different tiers at which I help people. I believe in helping youth. I've got a business, a startup with a buddy of mine and a third partner called Ortus Academy. And the product that we're launching is called Money Club. So Money Club is designed to bring these conversations about money to someone in college or before college so that it happens before you're like, ruh-roh.
Yeah. We all figure that out way too late. I just had that conversation with my girlfriend where it was like, how are they not teaching this in school? Like it's the actual fundamental things we need.
Right. Pythagorean theorem can go. Let's talk about earning money.
Yeah.
So that lane is really designed for anybody to build a basic foundation of money awareness themselves and the way they see money, really help them develop a relationship with money that's healthy. Another lane of mine that really got me to this stage was coaching youth soccer. So I've got a youth soccer team and I've coached girls now for 8 years. Tremendously life-altering experience to coach women in that capacity. And I'll be leading this team. I do some work for the club here at a higher level, director level, but then I'm launching my first book on helping parents go through the sporting experience in a way that lets their daughter really gather a lot for their life, not just for the sporting experience. Mm-hmm. So that book is called Let Her Play, and it's coming out very soon. And then finally, I've got a really umbrella called Frontrunner, where I work with entrepreneurs that are typically heart-led and help them once a quarter in like a weekend retreat or a 4-day retreat, figure out what guides them and what they want and what's enough. And by challenging them to think about what's in their way, like their identity and the relationship they have with their work and what they want, they can navigate their world a little bit more effectively. And it's really been organic. It's not marketed or advertised, but it's growing quickly, and they're changed, and it's really helping them impact more of the world. So, 3 strategies. 1 is Money Club. 2 is sports in the sports arena. And then 3 is heart-led entrepreneurs that are building social impact vehicles.
Yeah. So I love this because, one thing I know about you and the conversations we've had to this point is you're a very present person. You're very in the moment. You're deep in the conversations that we have. Your mind isn't elsewhere. And yet you're so forward focused. You're so future focused with all of these projects. So how do you handle that? Like, what are some of the techniques you use in your life to be able to have that forward goal, that future vision? I mean, like I said, with all your programs, even helping the youth. But then yet still staying so present and understanding that all that matters is right now. What do you do to kind of stay in that mindset?
It's the hardest thing in the world. I've got to exist really in both spaces. I've got to think about, where does this take us? What kind of decisions play out in the long term? And I'd say most of this happened in the last 6 weeks, where I really felt like I wouldn't say figured it out. Maybe like I took another step in the right direction. Part of it is you can sort of, back in the back of my room, I've got whiteboards, I've got glass boards here in front of me. So I'm consistently drawing and painting. And that paint represents the future in all ways, whether it be a notepad, a glass board, or a gigantic piece of white paper. But as soon as I leave painting, I've got to be here. And so I'm really working on setting these barriers and saying, okay, what exists now? What kind of feelings exist now? Because look, the hardest thing as an entrepreneur is like you get glimmery sparkles in the future and you're like, that's it. That's our moment. Yeah, like we're going to break through. That's our like payday. And then you completely shipwreck because you lost sight of what is in front of you.
Right.
And especially in an impact business, it becomes overly important that we are present with the people we are trying to change rather than looking at them as a stepping stone to the next impact vehicle. It's incredibly important.
That is so huge, man. Like I can't. So first of all, I just gave a talk a couple months ago in Los Angeles, and I talked about how like I'm here to serve everybody, and like whether you look at somebody who's above you, quote unquote, and somebody who's below you, quote unquote, I'm here to help everybody. Like I'm giving a helping hand to both because that's who I'm here to serve, right? Like nobody's a stepping stone for me. I try not to use people, but constantly in this entrepreneur, again that word, in this entrepreneur space, people are constantly trying to just use and abuse. And I mean, I can't tell you how many people reach out to me and try and this platform that I've built and try to use it in a self-serving manner versus saying, hey, there's something greater that I want to serve. And it's really, really mind blowing to me. And like, how do you shift? Because I think sometimes when we're in starvation mode, as entrepreneurs, it's hard not to feel like we need to be a little self-serving. Like, what is the shift for you? Like, how do you approach relationships?
A big buzzword for me is patience. A big buzzword for me is investment. So with those two armed together, I think you have the ability to make lasting impact. And when you think about most entrepreneurs and the way they want to sell, it's got to be now, right? It's all in a hurry. And one tactic that might be helpful for anybody listening, I took my 5-year vision and made it a 15-year vision. And by extrapolating that time and really doubling down on, hey, man, we're going to be really, really patient. My entire period from 25 to 35, I'm going to expect that nothing pays me. I'm just going to give it out. And by stretching that out, I really got some context on a person will only buy from me when they feel that their investment in me is equal to the investment I've made in them. And, if I'm selling anything, I want someone to feel like I've given before they even consider buy. Even beyond that, I think a tactical play on value exchange has to do with not selling and enrolling people. And I've really started to make that shift where no longer do I feel the need to be like, hey, you should buy this. I'm like, look, these are the problems that I can solve. And if you'd like to be a part of these movements at any particular level, I'd love to have you on board the boat. But this is way bigger than just you. It's way bigger than just me. And that's a very different perspective. So for every entrepreneur that's like, I got a product and I'm hustling it, I would encourage them to, one, extrapolate their period of success or their vision. And then two, really look at the equity that they're living in.
Yeah, dude, I love that. And it's so true. And while we're in the moment of talking about truly building a business and how you should look at it, how do you identify the right people to bring into your masterminds? How do you identify the people that you end up spending your time with and that who end up investing in you, or whether you want to call them customers or not? How do you identify them?
Great question, man. I've been very lucky in the Ortus Academy Money Club business to attract some really great people. But the example I will use will be very strange. So let's think about like an online dating profile, right? Mm-hmm. So in the entrepreneurship world, it's very similar. Like we somehow meet people and then we kind of come into the fold of influence, and we've got to figure out how to quickly like develop the sense of urgency and a sense of connection.
Yeah.
So I've played in the online dating game before. And one of the questions I would ask was, hey, what'd you learn today? And you'd be surprised at how many people would never answer that. But I knew very quickly that by asking that question and getting an answer, there was likely to be a great connection, because the average person wouldn't even be interested in that question.
Right.
Take somebody a little bit more aware and elevated in the way they approach the world. And I think that same approach can be brought to business. If I meet someone and they're like, hey, what do you do? My immediate response is generally, I can't tell you that, but I would like to know what you want to be when you grow up. And just seeing the way they respond and their body language. And, you know, there are a lot of innuendos you can pick up on. And by asking really good questions, you get really meaningful answers. When you ask those questions and get good answers, you can quickly put people into a pot and sit down for dinner or coffee and say, hey, look, tell me about you, right? That's a very vague question. I want to know, like, tell me the moment in your life where you thought it was all over, where like you had immediately broken into smithereens and you thought that this was the end of your world as you knew it, right? I want to know like the deep moments, the good stuff, real powerful moments. And by connecting on those levels, when we get into business, right, we get into the bed of business together, what we have is some synchronicity that fuels the relationship forward rather than the allure of a payoff.
Yeah, dude, that's really the approach that I accidentally have taken into pretty much all of my relationships and this podcast, and kind of why I feel like this movement has grown, because it is that authentic, another word that I'm starting to really hate, but this authentic approach to just relationships in general. I'm not trying to serve. I'm not trying to get them as customers. I'm not trying to serve anybody. Like, I'm just showing up and I'm saying, this is what serves me. And then I hope other people need to hear this too. And that's why it's recorded. And that's why it goes out into the universe and people tend to listen. And it's so true to show up in complete authenticity and say, hey, look, here's who we are. Here's the journey we're going through. Because then it does open up those doors to say, hey, where are you at and how can I help? And I think that's the key, is at the end is like, how can I help? And that's really kind of has grown everything for me. So I loved all of that, man. But I want to talk about I want to go a little bit deeper into Money Club, because I think it's really cool that you're really shaping young minds. Where did this whole idea come from, and what's the trajectory of what you're trying to build here?
Man, the breadcrumbs back on this one are interesting. I was managing a building, right, from maintenance to management to a new property. And the area was essentially leveled, and they built a new school. So I just went to the school and was like, hey, there's like a lot of really smart people in this like basically university building. Can I like bring them over here and do tutoring? They were like, well, sort of. We have to have insurance and this and this and this and this and this. So I called a buddy who is now my business partner out of like the blue. It wasn't like premeditated, just, hey, I want you to be a part of this. His name is Josh, and he's been a real anchor for me in this process. So he and I started off with building a math program. The school was like, hey, we need some help with math. And we were like, dude, no one is going to come to a math program. Oh my God. Like that just, we built some, they sucked, but like math programs just sound gross, right?
Yeah.
Even for me, and I happen to like math, but we decided that, maybe we could hook somebody into this and like get them jazzed up about money. And then they'd really have to do math and just the basics, not even the upper elite stuff. So we went down this path and we were like, you know what? A class ain't going to do it. Let's make a sport out of this. So we developed a sport where players are making decisions coming in. It's like hyper competitive. We like reward people when people make good choices. We like shout them out, taking over a gym. And like, it's just really cool. And content demand behind that started to grow. People were like, dude, we love the game. Can you teach them after the game? Then we started to realize something magical. Money is emotional. And by creating a game where we simulated emotions, we could actually tap into self-awareness early. When people talk about money, they're like, let's talk about interest. Let's talk about compound interest. Let's talk about 401ks. Like, and then if you're not asleep already, you soon will be. But that won't stick with you. It won't change anything. We need to really identify behaviors and habits.
Right.
And so this thing blossomed, and we got to a point where we were like, dude, we can't even say yes to everybody. We need to figure this out. How are we going to do this? And we migrated our content online, built an online community. We're bringing in partners so that, if you need a debit card for your family, you need a debit card as a kid, you need a bank account, you need to understand how to buy a house. You need to like access the financial services world because there's a lot of distrust there. Not only can you get access to those services, but you can understand money, understand yourself. And, schools are a tough place to be right now. If I was in school, I would be not only bored, but I'd be very confused. Here, I can order an Indonesian rug on Instagram in 33 seconds with 3 clicks. And we're still talking about, like, we're still reading out of a textbook about a science experiment that I know is going to succeed. Like, that's the point of the whole science fair. It's definitely going to work. And I just imagine as a kid, you're just like, what is going on? The world is like 80 miles an hour and school is like 2.
Yeah.
So we've just been bringing content and relationship development to parents and families so that they can understand money, help their kid understand money, develop discussions, and really open up someone to like, hey, I don't think I want to go to college because I really like working with my hands. And we're like, yes, great job figuring that out now. Don't spend 120 grand on college, go left. And if you're like, really want to be a lawyer, cool. Well, let's talk about you spending 365 grand the next 8 years of your life. And then whether or not you're going to like that and be happy there at the end. Is it parental pressure? Is it love for the job? So those kinds of conversations really have the power to uplift somebody from where they are. And we're super excited to be bringing it to the world.
Dude, I love it. And you know what's funny? I had somebody on the show a while ago, or I should say I interviewed somebody a while ago. It's one of the 2 or 3 episodes I never aired because the guy claimed that he was like reworking the education system. So I was like, yeah, man, let's have this conversation. And he didn't know what he was talking about. I'm like, how are you reworking the education system? You don't even know what you're talking about. This is insane. I'm not airing this episode. I didn't tell him. It just, but I love what you're doing because it's the approach of like, let's tie emotions to our thought processes versus I just need to do this because the world is telling me to do this, or I just need to do this because that's what my buddy John is doing. And I think when you tie emotions to anything, it makes you think a little bit longer, even if it's a second longer. It makes you think a second longer, but it's going to shift everything. Now, are you partnering with schools for this, or is this like a separate option for any kid?
It is an option for any kid and any family, so they can enroll in the online course like directly at home with their parents, or if they're entrepreneurial and hungry, they can definitely do it on their own. I'd say that schools can be a great place for us, but they're not our customer now. One, there's a lot of red tape, and as much as I want to make change in the public school space, there are way too many parameters for what kind of testing we need to do and what matters. And we're like, whoa, we have very different values. Yeah. So we tend to work with independent schools, charter schools, after school camps, sport clubs, things like that have a meat to them in values and emotional social learning, things like that. But we also offer, for the family that's like, hey, we really want to have some deeper discussions with our kids about money, or, we want them to understand our world as an entrepreneur, or we want them to get a sense of what they want to do a little bit earlier, then they can buy the course online. And for a $200 investment, we're talking about a massive, it can shift someone just enough that in the future at distance, that's a huge gap. It's a huge gap.
Yeah, dude, I love all that stuff, man. So obviously, because of this podcast, I have incredible conversations with amazing people who the world looks at and says they're successful, but obviously we all have a different definition of success. So my question for you is, what's your definition of success? And what are 3 things you're doing every single day to ensure that success for yourself?
Dude, these are awesome. That's an awesome question. Love that. So let me focus on, I'm going to answer the latter part of that question first. Social media posting is a big one, and I've been terrified of that for several years. And so I've just, hit the ground running with just share it. Like, even if people are like, that guy's an idiot, like, I'm just going to so that's one. Second, I'm big on writing, and my writing now consumes a good piece of my morning. That can be journaling. It can be, mapping out where we're headed as a business and vision work. I've started to really write thank you letters and love letters to myself, because I've definitely struggled with self-love through a process as intense as entrepreneurship. So writing is a second one. And then I'd say the third one, and this has been happening since I was 12, but fitness is a huge, huge, huge piece of my world. And I'm up usually at the gym at 5. So I get up at 4:30, in the gym at 5. I set no meetings before 10 a.m. and that's my block to get things done. But the gym and the conditioning of, hey, go until you fail, is great for entrepreneurs. And I highly recommend that. Also, for me to work from 4:30 a.m. till 10 p.m. every day, I got to be super fit. I got to have a lot of stamina. So those 3 are really big for me. And most people are very intimidated by that being a normal routine, just because it took a long time to build, right? It's not overnight. Right. As far as success goes, I am consistently reminded of how short life is. I had 2 friends my age, I'm 32, and they both lost their dad within the last 2 weeks. And it was just crushing for me to be around them, and crushing for them at an even higher level. So I'm reminded of the brevity of things, and my version of success outlasts my lifetime, but it's the impact that I make that I probably will never see that will bring that back to me. I need enough to take care of myself and have a little bit of fun and be able to balance my world. But aside from that, man, it's what kind of influence and what kind of impact am I making in the world? And there's certainly some vanity in that. I like to look good, and I like to be on stage and share. And I was just out in Vegas at the Zappos headquarters speaking, and it certainly felt awesome. But what was even more awesome was somebody coming up afterwards and being like, dude, that was the most amazing message you could have given me right now. That stuff, that fills the tank. And I can run marathons compared to most people when I get that kind of fuel. It's clean. Yeah. It's clean octane, man.
Dude, I love it, man. I love all that stuff. Obviously, this show is called The Growth and Movement, and I wrap up every single episode with one question. But before we get there, how do people get a hold of you? What's all the good stuff?
So they can find me on Instagram at Aaron Velky, AARON, V as in victory, BLKY. You can follow Join Money Club, or you can go to joinmoneyclub.com if you're interested in information. Our Instagram is We Are Money Club. So that's a couple ways you can find me. Find Money Club for those families and parents and school administrators that are listening in that want to learn more about it. I would encourage you to check out our Ortus Academy Money Club website. Both of them are kind of the same. There's a lot of content that we're feeding to families. There's nothing that we need back, but we really want to help drive some dialogue at home. And if I can help, hit me up on Instagram. Send me a message where you are, what you need. I've got a lot of different embers in the fire, a lot of different online courses that I've built outside of Money Club that, if people need help, I'm here to help them.
Dude, I love it. Guys, make sure you check that stuff out. Obviously, this stuff is absolutely priceless, man. And like I said, I wrap up every single episode with this one question. That is, in your life, what has been your biggest moment of growth?
I would say so when I quit my job, the first week I partied so hard. I was like, yeah, freedom. Man, what a charade. Then the second week I freaked out. And the third week it started to mellow down. But that third week I learned that fear will always stand next to me as long as I keep him there and don't let him walk in front of me. If he walks in front of me, it's a barrier. And it was in that moment, I remember it so vividly, I was walking into a meeting and I was like, oh my God, I'm freaking out right now. And I was like, you know what? Hey, you're standing in front of me, fear. I need you on the side of me. We're going to walk hand in hand. And every single thing from that moment, I've realized I've done despite being next to fear. And that thing is crippling sometimes if he's in front of you. And that just, it was so clear then that the rest of my life would be different as soon as I came to the conclusion that the relationship between he and I, fear and I, we were going to be friends.
I love that, man. That's actually a fantastic answer and a great description of like, how do we walk through this life? Even though there's going to be difficulties, there's going to be fears. How do we continue to maintain that, dude? I love all of that stuff. Thank you so much, dude, for coming on, sharing your wisdom and your knowledge, man. Really loved this conversation. This has been amazing. And thanks for changing the world for the future, man, because it's needed and a lot of people don't take that step. And this has been amazing.
Dude, man, I really appreciate that, Justin. Thank you so much for having me. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in.
Thank you guys so much for being a part of the Growth Now movement. This is how you can really help me out. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please share it out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that fun stuff. And let's grow this movement to epic heights. And it's all going to be because of you guys. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.